Imagine a congressional hearing so intense that every word, glance, and pause could change the conversation, and the nation is watching. In this video, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett faces unexpected challenges, curveballs, and high-pressure moments. Yet her calm, strategic, and evidence-based responses leave the room stunned. What happens when preparation meets poise under fire? Stay tuned, because this exchange isn't just political drama, it's a masterclass in leadership, accountability, and viral strategy you won't want to miss. The chamber was tense, filled with both anticipation and a subtle undercurrent of political theater. Representative Jasmine Crockett had already earned a reputation for her calm, precise, and factual approach to congressional hearings. Today, however, the energy was different. She was about to face a curveball unlike any she had encountered before. Governor DeSantis, known for his sharp political instincts and strategic questioning, had arrived prepared to challenge Crockett on a wide range of issues. What started as a routine discussion quickly escalated when DeSantis posed a question that seemed simple on the surface but was loaded with implications. The room shifted. Staffers leaned forward, journalists clicked pens in rapid succession, and cameras captured every subtle reaction. Crockett's response, however, was as composed as ever. She paused for just a moment, ensuring she fully understood the intent behind DeSantis's words. Her methodical approach, a combination of deep policy knowledge, legal training, and a keen sense of political strategy, allowed her to frame her reply with precision. "Governor," she began, her voice steady yet firm, "it's important to focus on verified facts and transparent processes. Speculation doesn't help our constituents, but clarity does." The remark, though measured, immediately shifted the energy in the room. It was not just a rebuttal. It was a demonstration of authority. DeSantis, whose strategy often relied on surprise and off-the-cuff commentary, realized he was up against someone who could anticipate the nuance behind every curveball. Observers noted the subtle tension between the two. Crockett's calm preparedness contrasted sharply with the intensity of DeSantis's delivery. The conversation quickly evolved from the initial challenge into a broader discussion on governance, accountability, and policy priorities. Crockett highlighted several issues, carefully using data, documented evidence, and historical examples to contextualize her responses. She didn't attack or ridicule. Instead, she leveraged facts to establish credibility and maintain the moral high ground. DeSantis attempted to interject multiple times, pressing for quick answers, perhaps hoping that the pace would force a slip or misstep. Crockett, however, maintained her rhythm, addressing each point with clarity. Her ability to control the conversation, without appearing confrontational, drew subtle nods from some committee members and a few audible murmurs of approval from journalists. What made the exchange particularly compelling was how Crockett turned the challenge into a teaching moment. She explained complex policy issues in a manner accessible to the general public, highlighting how certain political narratives could mislead if not examined carefully. The audience, both in the chamber and online following the live feed, could see that Crockett's approach wasn't just defensive. It was proactive, informative, and strategically sound. As the minutes passed, the tension did not dissipate, but transformed. What had begun as a sharp, potentially confrontational moment became an illustration of disciplined political communication. DeSantis, accustomed to high-pressure debates, realized that Crockett was not merely reacting but controlling the narrative. Her icy yet precise responses ensured that each of his points was addressed without losing sight of the larger story: accountability, transparency, and public trust. Observers noted the subtle dynamics of power in play. Crockett's preparation was evident not only in her content, but also in her delivery. Her pauses, emphasis, and timing highlighted the importance of strategic communication in political confrontations. Every carefully chosen word built upon the last, constructing a narrative that was both authoritative and relatable to viewers. journalists and committee members alike, by the end of the first hour. It was clear that this wasn't going to be a routine hearing. The curveball from DeSantis had been met with mastery. Crockett had not only defended her position, but had also subtly reframed the discussion to focus on factual accuracy, transparency, and the responsibilities of those in public office. The viral potential of this exchange became evident as social media feeds began highlighting key moments, capturing Crockett's calm demeanor, strategic framing, and sharp intellect, even as DeSantis attempted to pivot the discussion toward broader political implications. Crockett maintained her control. She anticipated the narratives that might emerge outside the chamber and addressed them preemptively, ensuring that the conversation remained rooted in evidence and reason. The audience began to recognize that this exchange was more than a political skirmish. It was a masterclass in how preparation, poise, and factual clarity can dominate high-stakes political interactions. By the conclusion of Part 1, the chamber and the wider public had already witnessed a shift in momentum. Crockett had taken what could have been a destabilizing challenge and turned it into an opportunity to demonstrate leadership, professionalism, and strategic communication. Observers could see that the story was far from over. The next phases of the hearing promised deeper insights, unexpected revelations, and further displays of political acumen that would continue to captivate both insiders and the general public. The room had settled into a rhythm, yet the intensity never waned. The initial curveball from Governor DeSantis had set the stage, but it was clear that the exchange between him and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was far from over. Both sides now understood the stakes. This was more than a political hearing. It was a test of poise, preparation, and persuasive power under pressure. Crockett's approach in Part 2 became increasingly strategic. She began to anticipate the subtleties in DeSantis' line of questioning, recognizing that his questions were not always about substance, but often about framing narratives. By focusing on verified data and historical precedent, Crockett redirected the conversation from potentially loaded statements toward an evidence-based discussion. The first notable exchange of this segment occurred when DeSantis attempted a rhetorical maneuver, suggesting that Crockett's policies could have unintended consequences. The chamber held its breath. Crockett, unflustered, responded with a calm, "Deliberate analysis, Governor, while your concern is noted. The potential outcomes of policy must always be evaluated through comprehensive data, precedent, and ethical considerations. Speculation without evidence risks misleading the public and undermining informed debate." Her response did more than deflect. It framed the discussion in a way that elevated the hearing. From a confrontational back and forth to a public demonstration of accountability and fact-based reasoning. Committee members leaned forward, journalists scribbled notes, and observers noted how Crockett's command over information shifted the dynamic in her favor. Next, Crockett addressed the public perception and media angle of the discussion. She recognized that every word spoken in the chamber would be dissected online and across news platforms. By preemptively clarifying key points, she controlled the narrative beyond the hearing room. Transparency isn't just about disclosure, she explained. It's about ensuring the public can understand the context, methodology, and implications of decisions that affect their daily lives. DeSantis attempted a follow-up question, phrased to elicit a reactive response. His tone carried the expectation that Crockett might falter under pressure or overcomplicate her answer. Instead, she maintained her composure, methodically breaking down her answer into 3 clear points, each anchored by documented evidence. Her ability to remain unshakable under scrutiny drew subtle reactions from the committee, nods of approval, murmurs of acknowledgement, and even brief glances from DeSantis, suggesting recognition of her skill. The conversation then moved to a series of hypothetical scenarios. DeSantis sought to challenge Crockett on policy outcomes, predicting obstacles, and potential criticism. Crockett's response highlighted her analytical rigor. She evaluated each scenario with clarity, providing historical examples and factual reasoning to explain why assumptions without evidence could be misleading. This demonstrated not only her depth of knowledge, but also her strategic ability to anticipate lines of attack. Before they escalated, a crucial moment came when Crockett used a visual, a series of charts and documents to illustrate statistical trends and policy outcomes. This was a turning point. By translating complex data into easily understandable visuals, she connected with both the committee and the wider audience. It was clear that Crockett understood how to communicate powerfully not just to policymakers, but to citizens, who would follow the hearing online or through news coverage. By mid-session, the chamber had shifted into a new energy. DeSantis, while still probing, recognized that the opportunity to provoke a misstep had diminished. Crockett's preparation and foresight had neutralized his most potent rhetorical tools. Observers noted that she had effectively reframed the conversation, setting the agenda rather than reacting to it. Throughout Part 2, Crockett emphasized the principle of accountability. She carefully distinguished between personal attacks and systemic critique, ensuring that the discussion remained grounded in ethics, evidence, and civic responsibility. We must evaluate policies and statements by their factual merit, not by political theatrics or sensationalized headlines, she reminded the room. Her words resonated not just within the chamber, but across social media feeds, where viewers began analyzing her methods, timing, and delivery. As the second hour concluded, it became evident that Crockett had not only survived the curveball, but had turned it into a platform for demonstrating strategic communication at its highest level. Every answer, every clarification, and every calm rebuttal strengthened her credibility while highlighting the contrast between measured leadership and reactive posturing. Part 2 concluded with a subtle yet unmistakable shift in momentum. The chamber's energy now reflected respect and acknowledgement of Crockett's methodical approach. DeSantis, though still composed, appeared increasingly aware that her preparation, legal expertise, and strategic poise made it difficult to unsettle her. Observers noted that this segment had laid the groundwork for the final phase, where Crockett's ultimate demonstration of control, clarity, and influence would capture national attention by the end of this part. The audience, both in the chamber and online, could see that this was more than a debate or political exchange. It was a display of how meticulous preparation, calm authority, and evidence-based communication can shape public discourse, command respect, and redefine the narrative in high-stakes political confrontations. The chamber had grown increasingly attentive. What had begun as a challenging exchange had evolved into a strategic showcase of leadership and composure. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, having deftly navigated DeSantis's initial curveballs and anticipated follow-ups, now began to turn the conversation toward broader principles and implications. Her poise and mastery over facts had begun to shift not only the energy in the room, but also the narrative outside. As journalists and political analysts watched every move, DeSantis, sensing the shift, attempted a different approach, one designed to provoke an emotional reaction rather than elicit a factual response. He referenced high-profile political controversies, implying that Crockett might be unprepared for high-stakes scrutiny. Yet Crockett's reaction was as precise as it was calm. She acknowledged the historical examples, but reframed them into a lesson on preparation and accountability. History teaches us that speculation without evidence undermines trust. True leadership isn't about reaction. It's about clarity, preparation, and commitment to transparency. Our constituents deserve that clarity, not conjecture. The effect was immediate. Committee members nodded subtly. Journalists leaned closer, and online audiences began sharing clips of her measured, confident delivery. Crockett had transformed a potential confrontation into a teaching moment, illustrating the contrast between strategic, evidence-based leadership and rhetorical posturing. Next came a segment of the hearing that would go viral. DeSantis attempted a rapid-fire series of hypothetical questions, each designed to pressure Crockett into a misstep. Her responses, however, were deliberate and analytical. She addressed each scenario with clear reasoning, using data, precedent, and documented case studies to illustrate her points. In doing so, she maintained the moral high ground while subtly exposing the limits of DeSantis' strategy. Pivotal moment occurred when Crockett directly highlighted the responsibility of public figures to communicate facts accurately, without raising her voice or resorting to personal attacks. She delivered a statement that reverberated across the chamber and into national media feeds. Our obligation is not to outshine opponents with theatrics, but to illuminate truth with evidence. That is how trust is built, and that is how accountability is enforced. By framing the discussion this way, Crockett subtly turned the challenge back on DeSantis. She demonstrated that effective leadership is less about aggressive posturing and more about precision, ethical clarity, and the ability to guide public understanding. Analysts noted that this approach effectively shifted the conversation. DeSantis' curveballs were no longer destabilizing. They were opportunities for Crockett to showcase control and expertise. The chamber now began to sense a broader lesson unfolding. What started as a political confrontation had become a real-time demonstration of the power of preparation, calm authority, and strategic communication. Each carefully chosen word by Crockett further amplified her credibility, while simultaneously forcing DeSantis to navigate the discussion more cautiously. Observers began to note that this segment of the hearing was not just about policy. It was about how political narratives are constructed, challenged, and ultimately reshaped by those who wield facts effectively. Social media and news outlets quickly picked up on the exchange. Clips of Crockett's icy factual rebuttals spread rapidly, with hashtags and comment threads highlighting her calm demeanor and clear articulation. Citizens, both politically engaged and casual viewers, recognized the skill involved in transforming a potentially hostile scenario into a public demonstration of competence and leadership. Crockett then moved toward the closing phase of the hearing, summarizing the main points with clarity and precision. She emphasized accountability, transparency, and ethical responsibility, reinforcing the principle that leadership is measured by action, preparation, and integrity rather than aggression or theatrics. Her closing remarks in this segment were widely quoted. Every question deserves a fact-based response. Every claim must be verified. And every public official has a duty to uphold clarity, transparency, and the trust of those we serve. As the segment concluded, it was evident that Crockett had fully turned the tables. The viral impact was already evident. Journalists were discussing her strategic poise. Analysts were evaluating her approach as a model for high-stakes political communication, and social media buzzed with admiration for her calm authority. What had begun as a single curveball had transformed into a lesson in leadership, strategy, and credibility. By the end of Part 3, the momentum had clearly shifted. Crockett's command of the narrative, her ability to anticipate challenges, and her ethical, evidence-driven approach had not only neutralized DeSantis' curveballs, but had also established her as a formidable voice in American politics. The final phase promised even greater clarity, resolution, and national attention, where every lesson, strategy, and viral moment would culminate into a decisive conclusion. The chamber was electric. Every word, every pause, every glance mattered. After the extended exchange in which Governor Ron DeSantis attempted to unsettle her, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett now had the floor to solidify her position and demonstrate the full scope of her strategic, factual, and composed approach. This was the moment that would ultimately define the hearing, the culmination of hours of calculated discourse, careful rebuttals, and viral-worthy exchanges. Crockett began by addressing the broader implications of the discussion, emphasizing public accountability, transparency, and the critical importance of evidence-based decision-making. Her statements were precise, avoiding exaggeration or personal attacks, yet they carried undeniable authority. The room listened intently as she framed her closing points around principles rather than politics. Our responsibility as elected officials is to serve with clarity, integrity, and accountability. Public trust is not earned through theatrics or intimidation, but through deliberate, informed, and ethical actions. This is not a partisan statement. It is a standard we all must uphold. DeSantis, who had attempted multiple rhetorical maneuvers throughout the hearing, appeared momentarily caught off guard. Crockett's calm authority and unflappable presence had neutralized his strategies, and her systematic presentation of evidence and precedent left little room for counterattack. Observers could see the subtle recognition. In his demeanor, he was facing an opponent who was not merely responding but controlling the narrative with poise and strategic insight. The exchange then transitioned to specific policy matters. That had been the focus of DeSantis's initial curveball. Crockett methodically addressed each issue, providing clear context, data-backed explanations, and historical references. This approach not only demonstrated her expertise, but also highlighted her ability to anticipate potential questions and preemptively clarify points for the audience. It became evident that Crockett's preparation extended far beyond simple knowledge. It included an acute understanding of media dynamics, public perception, and the subtle art of political messaging. As the hearing progressed, Crockett effectively summarized her arguments in a manner that emphasized transparency and accountability. She reinforced the idea that facts, evidence, and integrity are the cornerstones of responsible leadership. In doing so, she shifted the energy in the chamber. What had started as a tense confrontation now served as a powerful example of calm, authoritative, and strategic communication. Social media and news outlets were quick to react. Clips of Crockett's icy, factual responses went viral within minutes, highlighting her ability to maintain composure under pressure and use evidence-based arguments to assert her position. Analysts praised her strategic framing, while commentators noted how she transformed potential hostility into an opportunity to showcase credibility and leadership. The viral reaction demonstrated the profound impact of preparation, clarity, and calm authority in high-stakes political environments. DeSantis attempted one final interjection, likely hoping to regain some control over the narrative. Crockett, however, anticipated the move. With her voice steady and tone measured, she delivered a response that addressed his point succinctly, while reaffirming her overarching message: respectful debate is valuable, but it cannot replace truth. Our constituents deserve clear answers, not confusion or distraction. Leadership requires accountability, and today, that principle has guided this discussion. The chamber responded with a quiet acknowledgement, the subtle murmurs, nods, and attentive posture of committee members signaled recognition of her effectiveness. Crockett's final statements resonated not only in the hearing room but across the nation, as citizens, journalists, and political observers shared, analyzed, and discussed the strategic brilliance of her approach. By the conclusion of the hearing, the momentum had clearly shifted. Crockett had taken what could have been a destabilizing challenge and turned it into a platform to demonstrate leadership, poise, and mastery over both facts and strategy. Her approach emphasized that success in high-stakes political arenas is not about aggression or theatrics, but about preparation, clarity, and the ethical use of information. The viral impact of the hearing continued to grow. Short clips circulated across social media, highlighting her calm responses, precise framing, and confident demeanor. Analysts discussed her method as a masterclass in political communication, noting how she had used the opportunity to educate, engage, and inspire the public. Observers also pointed out that the exchange had broader implications for how political confrontations are conducted and perceived, demonstrating that controlled, factual, and ethical communication can dominate even the most intense scrutiny. As the session officially concluded, it was clear that Jasmine Crockett had achieved something rare. She had transformed a high-pressure confrontation into a defining moment of authority, clarity, and viral relevance. The chamber emptied, reporters crowded around, and social media feeds buzzed with admiration for her calm intelligence and strategic acumen. In the end, what had started as a curveball challenge from Ron DeSantis became a showcase of how meticulous preparation, ethical clarity, and composed communication can redefine political narratives. Crockett's performance reinforced a fundamental principle in the arena of public service. True leadership is demonstrated not through reactionary tactics, but through thoughtful, informed, and principled engagement, a lesson that will be studied, admired, and shared for years to come.